This hour, we're going to be moving into the royal area because an awful lot of royal stories over the course of the weekend, including the fact that Meghan Markle has seen fit to write to the palace, apparently, asking them if they can please provide her with any evidence that she was a bully. I'm not quite sure whether they're going to respond. I'm not quite sure whether they're going to allow her to preempt the investigation, which has already been going in by a law firm, I understand, from outside of the palace. We got the Prince William children making cards for Diana for Mother's Day, which was a very sweet thing to do. And it certainly put the old Duke and Duchess of Netflix on the back foot because they didn't do anything like that. I was half expecting to come out with a video, which they might do at some point soon, presumably, because we haven't been seeing them for at least a couple of days. Ever since 1 week ago, they did that interview with Oprah Winfrey. Harry hypocrisy is what it says in the Mail today, because CBS, the brand and the TV company that they did the interview with Oprah, is the same TV company that actually ran a very famous picture of Princess Diana in the car after the crash, which we all saw in this country, but which nobody published, right? Not one newspaper in this country published it, not one media outlet published it. CBS chose to publish it, and Harry thought it was a good idea to be interviewed by the same network. What do you make of that? Hypocrisy? Maybe. Angela Levin's here. We'll find out from her what's going on. 0344 499 1000 is the number. You're listening to me, Mike Graham, right here on the fastest growing radio station on the planet. It is, of course, Talk Radio.
Mid-morning with Mike Graham. Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the home of common sense. Let us go straight away now to Angela Levin, royal biographer, our favourite royal author. She's going to tell us all about what's been going on. Angela, very good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with CBS, because I wasn't actually aware that CBS had run it. I knew that picture, which we've all seen in the media, was published by some sort of European, I think, magazines and a few maybe television stations in other parts of the world. But I wasn't aware that CBS had run it.
Yes. I mean, it actually came out, the story came out the day that the documentary came out as well, but I think it was missed because the Daily Mail has picked it up today.
Yes.
It makes you cringe, doesn't it?
It really does, because it's a very striking picture, and for people who haven't seen it, it's a picture of Diana sitting in the back of the car. She's got her back facing the front seat, if you can imagine that, and she's in this sort of well. She's not on the seat; she's sitting on the floor, and she actually looks okay, except for a little dribble of blood coming out of her mouth. Yes.
I mean, it is a hideous picture.
Yeah.
Now, what we don't know is whether Prince Harry forgot all about that because he did complain about it years ago, or whether he's just got no say in the matter. And Oprah wanted it to come through that particular channel. So did Meghan. And Harry went along with it, as he seems to do increasingly nowadays.
Well, he certainly doesn't appear to have much say in anything that goes on. If Meghan wants something, she gets it, doesn't she? And also, he seems to have forgotten an awful lot of things, because some of the stuff he came out with, like, for example, that he wasn't able to ride on a bike when he was a child. I mean, ridiculously, we've now seen about 1 million pictures of him riding on a bike with his parents.
Well, I think they had a narrative, and Harry had to fit in with the narrative. The one thing he sort of balked at very slightly, I got a bit of a look from his wife, was people mentioning what sort of skin colour Archie would have.
Yes.
Because Meghan said it was in the middle of her pregnancy. Prince Harry, when he came on later, he wasn't on at that particular time. He was a bit of an afterthought. And he said, no, it was when we first met, and it was only once, and he doesn't want to talk about it. So that's the one point where he felt it wasn't right. He had to say something.
Yes.
Otherwise, he tends to go along. And the hate and the spitefulness is very, very upsetting and disturbing. I can't believe he's like that. He wasn't when I met him. And all this bile, it's just pouring out of both of them when they've got so much to be grateful and
But this is what
happy
people say, you know, despite whatever, difficulties they may have had in the past, they're clearly not unhappy now. They don't have any reason to be. They've left the situation that they say was causing them so much anguish. They're now in a different place. They're now in a position of making a bucket load of money. They're in a beautiful house. It seems incredible that they would have anything to complain about.
Yeah, and they've got one child and another on the way, which is always a huge blessing. The thing is, they're absolutely not happy because they want revenge and they're bitter and they want to destroy the people who for some reason has put them where they are. Meghan would be hardly known about if she hadn't married Prince Harry. She's now one of the most famous women in the world and very rich,
Yes.
and everybody's after her. And Prince Harry had a life of entitlement. I'm not saying that anyone who is part of the royal family has an easy life. There are lots of.
Oh, I'm sure it can be quite distressing. But I mean, lots of things can be quite distressing, including not having any money, having a child that is not very well, or having a partner who dies, or there's all kinds of things that happen to people that they have to endure. And I'm sure that if you have a bucket load of money and a lovely house, it's a lot easier.
Yes, I agree with you. The interesting thing to me is it seems that Meghan is very bright, very quick thinking, but she doesn't seem to have any idea of how she comes across.
No.
People other than a sort of young people in America. I think this whole interview was geared for that. It wasn't so much an interview because, as you and I know, who interview people all the time, there was no second question.
No.
If you're saying that, who was it? Why was that? When did this happen? There are no sort of, come on, give me the real facts. It's just, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
What?
my goodness.
What? Yeah. I mean, it's that kind of ludicrously rehearsed. What? And you knew that they'd already practiced it about 8 times. You know.
Like the chickens.
Yeah, I know. Incredible. But I mean, the other thing that proves that Harry wasn't happy was that he obviously went to Oprah afterwards and said, you have to clarify that this is not the Queen or Prince Philip in terms of the person who was alleged to have made this racist remark. So he obviously felt bad, I think. Here's my theory on that whole business, right? I think that he reported to Meghan that something had been said, and he kind of maybe overemphasized it in some way just to be, to sort of keep in with her or something. And she's now kind of run with it and turned it into something completely different.
Yes, I'm sure that's right. I mean, these little things where he's maybe said a little bit, he wanted to say something for himself, they're diminishing all the time.
Yes.
I'm pleased there are a few left, but if you noticed in the interview, many times he tried to speak, Meghan gave him a quick tap on the hand, and he stopped immediately. So
he looks like a Labrador more than her husband, doesn't he?
Well, not even that, I think. She loves her dog very much indeed.
Well, indeed. It is terribly sad. But what about the response last week? Because I haven't really spoken to you, I don't think, since the William episode, which was very interesting, I thought. And I thought, there are some who think that the palace is going to have to be more forthcoming with the public. I'm not sure they will, and I'm not sure they do need to be.
No, I think I'm very pleased that they're going to an outside law company. We don't know which one it is, but you can be sure that it's very highly respected and absolutely straight.
It'll be Farrers or somebody, won't it? Or Mishcon de Ray or something like that.
Yes, they've got 2 or 3, of course. And it makes it a bit more acceptable. I think they recognise that Meghan is a very tough negotiator. And we see her idea of entitlement, that she's demanding to see everything. But of course, they have no reason to and cannot do that. She has no right to say the Queen of England and the Commonwealth should actually behave to her direct statements.
No.
And also, I don't know if you can trust her because she leaks things to other papers. It wouldn't be her, it would be a friend.
Oh, yeah. Well, I saw evidence of that all weekend. There were stories about her wanting to have sort of political ambitions, and it was all being put about, supposedly, I think it was the Mail on Sunday that ran the story, saying it was an official who had worked with Tony Blair, who had briefed the paper, but without giving them his name, that she had a great ambition to run for president in 2024. I mean, just imagine the sort of the lack of self-awareness of someone saying that.
Well, that's what I mean. She hasn't got the self-awareness. She focuses everything on her. That's why some of her complaints were minute, that she had to look up on Google how to sing the national anthem. It's no big deal to hold on to that for 3 years, for goodness sake. It's ludicrous. But I think that nothing is ever good enough for Meghan. She's so ambitious that she wants to rule the world and everything in it. Write books, tell us how to live. The list is endless.
Yeah.
And there's no feeling that she's satisfied with something. And I'm all for people to be ambitious. It's not ambition. It's a sort of conquering attitude.
Yeah. It's a sort of keeping up with the Gettys, I would call it, rather than the Joneses, because she's looking over at Oprah going, she's got more money than us. I'd like to be as rich as her. So it's not enough to have, 30 million. You need to have 60 or maybe 100.
Yes, I think it's more than that, actually. I think she looks around, she takes what she can from people and she absorbs it. And then she wants to show the world how she is the best person. She's always talked that a global platform she wants, there's always some sort of theory like compassion around the world. But, we don't think particularly that she's a very compassionate woman.
Well,
it
would not seem so. I mean, the other thing that I found staggering was the fact that was revealed late last week, I think it was, that most of the headlines that they were shoving in front of the cameras while the interview was going on were concocted. Some of them didn't actually exist at all. Many of them were from foreign publications, and ITV now has had to remove some of them from the ITV hub, and so has CBS.
Yes, they did a documentary. I was part of it about the aftermath of the introduction of the talk. Yeah, thank you. That's the word. Yeah. of the talk with Oprah. And they had to sort of, the last minute, it went out last night, the last minute, they had to get rid of all those things. I mean, I think it was more than half were from non-UK papers.
Yes.
Put different headlines on it. I mean, that is an atrocious way to behave. And the thing is, it
literally is fake news, isn't it?
Yes, but it also assumes we're all stupid and nobody's going to investigate it. Nobody's going to look at it in detail, and they'll get away with as much as they possibly can.
Yes, and the ones that were from British publications were sort of doctored in such a way as to make it seem that they were saying sometimes the opposite of what they were actually saying.
Yes, and they use the Daily Mail. Whatever you feel about the Daily Mail, you can't lie.
I love the Daily Mail.
You can't lie about saying what they've said when they haven't said it at all, particularly when there's a case pending about honesty and all the rest of it. She's doing the paper for breach of privacy, etc. And you just can't do that. And nobody really should even want to, because they had plenty of stuff to say without actually trampling on that area.
Quite. And this is the interesting thing. What did you make of what happened at the weekend as well, with the Duchess of Cambridge going to the vigil in Clapham Common, and also the children, William and Kate's children, writing cards to Diana? I mean, I call me an old cynic, but I saw the sort of hand of Kensington Palace's PR machine there.
Well, I don't think it was done in that way. I think perhaps it was William saying, Harry isn't the only one who's had a terrible loss. He didn't want Harry to take over the whole of the agony of losing their mother. I think that it was to show that he has lost her, but he's handling it in an entirely different way. I felt very moved by seeing Kate there with all the flowers. She took 2 bunches of daffodils from her garden to put down there. She didn't have any makeup on. She was very casually dressed. Apparently it was off-duty photographer who saw her and took her picture. I hope she had some security guards around her, even though we wouldn't have known who they were. And I thought her sentence where she remembered the fear when she was, before she got married, of walking around late in London. And I thought, there goes it for us all. We all remember that. I do. It is scary. And to have a policeman, I know he's not been convicted yet, arrested for possibly being involved in that terrible death, it was very moving and a very good thing.
So.
I don't think she did it for publicity. I think she did it because she wanted to show loyalty. I think it is a jolt for all women, actually.
Yes, I suppose so. I suppose Meghan would say, right, if she had done it, she'd be accused of all sorts of pandering to publicity and for doing it for show to try and prove something. So, I mean, in a way, and I'm not suddenly turning into a sympathiser of Meghan's, but I mean, you can see how she could make that claim.
Well, I don't know, actually. I mean, if she'd gone without makeup with a cap, she used to go around walking around Kensington High Street with a cap on, and she was very barely recognised. I think it's the way you do it, actually, that you don't go with a photographer to come along and
Right.
position you in a rather attractive angle, you know. She was there.
Well, we can all remember that picture they posed for in the war grave cemetery, can't we? Which was dreadful.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was meaning, really. Totally phony. As for the Mother's Day cards, apparently this is something that the children do every year. And I think using Granny Diana, none of us actually think of her as that. People are frozen in time when they die. And at 36, she's a glamorous young woman. And you think, my goodness, she's nearly 60, would have been nearly 60.
I know, it's amazing when you think like that, actually, because I hadn't really thought about that either.
And I think that little Charlotte's comment, "Papa is missing you," really tugs at your heartstrings. Apparently, Prince William talks to them every night about their grandmother, and also this is an annual action that they do. It's not just done for the papers, but I think they wanted to show very quietly that they have a different view of grief.
Yes. I think we may have just lost you. I'm not sure if that's the case, but Angela, they're talking about the two cards that were published. On one, it says, "Dear Granny Diana, I'm thinking of you on Mother's Day. I love you very much. Papa is missing you," and that's from Charlotte. And then George says, "Happy Mother's Day, dear Granny Diana. I love you very much and think of you always. Sending lots of love," from George. And they do seem very sweet. They honestly do. But as I say, I'm sure. Not with any cynicism or with any scepticism here. I'm just saying it doesn't do them any harm in Kensington Palace to put that kind of stuff out at this time. But I think we've lost Angela, so thanks very much indeed. Angela Levin, their royal biographer, telling us all about the latest situation where Meghan has asked to see any evidence that she's been accused of bullying, which of course I wouldn't expect the palace to give her because they're doing an investigation. They're actually hiring a law firm to do that investigation. And you wouldn't send her anything, would you? Because you know what would happen to it. It would end up in the papers, wouldn't it? Or here's another interview with Oprah, and here's me being accused of bullying. Look at this, and then cut a few bits out of it and make it look completely different from what it actually was. You know what I mean?